Good morning, everyone. Good morning, classmates, and good morning, sir. Our topic all today that we chose is all about the education in Latin America and the Caribbean. So, the educational system in Latin America and the Caribbean have a long tradition going back to the formation of their nations, wherein education became a default feature of nation states in Latin America and the Caribbean, incorporated in their institutions after independence. So, in this phase, most educational institutions were public and conceived as a part of the civil service. So, the teachers and principals being public servants and curricular content being determined top-down hierarchically or mababas do you mean by this? There are just few. So within the country, heterogeneous panorama that includes a great disparities measuring against most social economic indicators, uh, including educational measures. And the LAC countries were instrumental in the development of their educational system in giving a priority to primary education in order to educate citizens of the newly formed nation state. Because the Latin American nations have tried hard to advance toward universal education and to increase enrollment in secondary and higher education, but they have not been able to improve the quality levels. So, while universal coverage in primary education is close to being a reality, quality level in primary and secondary education are low and unequality distributed. So, the higher education has also increased at the pace of 25% of college age individuals were enrolled in post-secondary institutions in 2021. However, the quality of the higher education faculty is poor and there is a need for effective agenda for action. And the LAC countries were instrumental in development of their educational systems in giving a priority to primary education in order to educate citizens of the newly formed nation states. So, some countries are advancing in policies towards including pre-primary and upper secondary school as compulsory too. Higher education, university and non-university has already achieved threshold of massification in most countries and universalization, defined as enrolling 15% of the age cohort. In a few of the countries, still the region faces challenges related retention, illiteracy, and all over quality in its educational system. But despite the overall educational trends and certain shared features, LAC is a region characterized by enormous differences among countries in terms of educational development. So the UNESCO's Education for All Development Index provide a portrait of the status of basic education in that region of encompassing four indicators. First one is the primary education net enrollment ratio, and the second one adult literacy, and then the third one is gender parity and equality, and fourth one is quality of education calculated as survival rate.
The measure of assessment is the allocation of public budget to education. UNESCO and its EFA partners have consistently advocated an increase in the allocation of funding as measured by the share of GDP 4 to 6% allotted education according to UNESCO 2016. Only high-income countries reach average close to 6%, including all European Union countries, the United States, and Canada. On average, LAC countries spend 4.75%, just above developing countries in other regions such as Middle East and North Africa, 4.69%, East Asia and Pacific, 4.44%, and Sub-Saharan Africa, 4.33%. South Asian countries lag behind, allocating only 2.85%. The Philippine educational system shows lasting influences of the Spanish, American, and Japanese regimes. After nearly 4 centuries of Spanish rule, an educational system covering the elementary to collegiate levels was established through the promulgation of the Educational Decree of 1863. The American regime was marked by an extensive public educational system that used English as medium of instruction. The regime attempted to unify the archipelago, to spread the ideals of democracy, and to facilitate colonial rule. During this period, the Philippine educational system, particularly the public school system, became unified and well-organized, enabling every citizen to enjoy the benefits that education provides. During the brief Japanese occupation, 1941 to 1944, the Japanese redirected the political and cultural orientation of education from Western to Japanese values rooted on love for neighbor. Vocational education and the use of Nippongo as medium of instruction were also introduced. The Japanese also stressed the importance of physical education and music, particularly singing Japanese songs according to San Mateo and Tanko 1997. The Philippine educational system also stressed the importance of attaining socio-economic development, non-formal education, and vocational training. The system was revolutionized to bridge the gap between manpower development and countries' industrial needs. Today, the Philippine educational system adopts a more quantifiable measure of performance, promotes values of good citizenship, English instruction, global education, and strong technical vocational education. It aims to address multiple and diverse challenges and institutional streamlining. The educational system of Finland provides practical examples of equity and excellence in education. It rests on an equitable legislative base leading to an even-handed nationwide educational provision. This article discusses the basic features and development of the education system from the preschools and basic education to upper secondary schools, polytechnics, higher education, and adult education. The education system reflects the high value placed on education throughout the country for both its intrinsic and instrumental value to the community and the individuals, demonstrated in particular by the teacher's profession having an exceptionally high community status. Certification and licensing. Most educational systems require candidates to obtain a government-issued certificate of license signifying that a candidate has completed required professional preparation and training. Many systems require some kind of performance exam or paper and pencil test for prospective teachers. In some systems, these tests are administered as part of a teacher preparation program. In others, they are administered by the school upon employment or by the state. These commonalities reflect the global impact on the increased trend toward the professionalization of teaching. Tolerance and diversity. The education system in the United States continues to experience an increase in culturally diverse students and families. For example, there are community-based organizations whose primary mission is to provide English as second language or English as a learned language programs for students and families and schools as they learn to mutually accommodate one another's attitude, beliefs, and values. In addition to seeking partnerships with community-based organizations that help families in transition become a part of the educational and community systems, schools may seek interactions with organizations that serve particularly minority groups in all effort to expose students to new cultures and diversity. Such as partnerships may also allow educators to gain insight into a family's attitudes, beliefs, and values regarding education and citizenship. Now we're going to Latvia upon their administrative and supervisory structure. The educational system is administered on 3 levels: national, municipal, and institutional. The Parliament, Cabinet of Ministers, and Ministry of Education and Science are the main decision-making bodies at national level. Every municipality supervises the preschool, basic, and general upon secondary schools located in its administrative territory and participates in funding the maintenance expenses of those educational institutions. Vocational education and training schools are mainly maintained and supervised by the Ministry of Education and Science in strong cooperation with branch ministries and social partners. In the tertiary sector, decision-making, regulation, funding, and governance are shared between the government and the institutions themselves. The primary institution responsible for higher education is the Ministry of Education and Science, which administers government funding, policy, and programs. While higher education institutions are autonomous, they are accountable to the government via accreditation. The intersection of culture and learning styles. Asian students. Some educational systems are very teacher-centered in that the teacher lectures and the students are passive recipients, which means students prefer didactic and teacher-centered style of teaching and would show great respect for the wisdom and knowledge of their teachers. The history of education, race, and education. The American educational system's foundations as an unequal system rooted in hierarchies of race have both inspired and limited attempts at reforms that seek to remedy the long-term effects of these inequalities. Over the course of the 20th century, the expansion of the nation's educational system has been implicated in the ongoing construction and maintenance of a racialized social system through a variety of mechanisms, including physical separation, curricular differentiation, and unequal funding. The efforts of minority populations, both immigrant and domestic, to address these inequalities through self-help, petitioning the state, and activist traditions were central in affecting reform, but were often limited by the efforts of state and local bodies to preserve privilege within these hierarchical systems, demonstrating that schools are both the source and the means of affecting inequality in racially stratified systems. So thank you for watching and listening.